Hello and welcome to the Franz Van Kat interview. I'm Annette Young. Now, as the pop song goes, it's not just about money, except in this case, it's also about oil. In a region beset with conflict, the relatively prosperous Kurdish autonomous zone in northern Iraq has more than ruffled feathers by deciding to sell oil and natural gas directly to Turkey. It's a move that's infuriated Washington and Iraq's central government in Baghdad. Both fear that oil independence could lead Kurds to split from Iraq, a move that could lead to a greater Kurdistan, also taking in communities in neighbouring Turkey, Syria and Iran. Denise Natali, an American specialist on Kurdistan from the National Defence University in Washington, joins me in the studio today. Denise, thanks for being with us. Now, for many people, the world is currently focused on Syria and also the situation in Ukraine. The Kurdish question is certainly not on people's radars at the moment, but tens of millions of Kurds live in those countries that I just mentioned, and they've had long-held ambitions for independence. Now, amid the turmoil that's affected the Middle East, they're certainly taking decisive steps to advance their dream. So what exactly is wrong with that?
There's a big problem here in terms of there's still the issue of state sovereignty. And the second largest problem is that you have two very weakened states of Syria and Iraq in which Kurdish communities can take advantage of this political vacuum. What's happening in Iraq, although we're looking at Syria and the Ukraine, it's probably the second largest problem and potential area of instability after Al-Qaeda.
And people don't realize that, do they?
This is one of Iraq's most significant challenges and potential crises in the future, in the sense that you're talking about a potential 45 billion barrels of oil. The Kurdistan region has leverage or is attempting to use now financial and hydrocarbons potential to pressure Baghdad to get even greater autonomy. I do question the notion of independence, but it does bring in Turkey. And it has much larger regional implications than just Iraq, because it's sending signals now to Kurds in Syria, to Kurds in Turkey, and the Kurdistan region becoming a base for these other Kurdish groups.
So given those regional implications, Denise, how much concern is there in Washington about this deal?
There is large concern. On the one hand, that the Kurds of Iraq are pushing a bit more than they could or should, I should say should, that there is the territorial integrity of the Iraqi state that we all support and state sovereignty, and that this can have destabilizing effects, not only for the territorial unity of Iraq, but again, for the region. So on the other hand, we do know that the Kurds don't have the leverage that they think that they do, in the sense that 95% of the region's revenue base comes from Baghdad. So you do have an important crisis today when the Iraqi government says we're going to cut your revenues, which they have. You have 3 months of civil servants not being paid. You've got boycotts right now, and this is spilling over. So it's going to create tensions not only between the Kurds and Baghdad, internally, and of course now what's happening in Turkey is spilling over into the Kurdistan region.
And explain to me why it's affecting Turkey.
It's affecting Turkey in the sense that the government in Turkey has established very close relations with the Kurdistan regional government, which has infuriated the Iraqi government in the sense that this is sidestepping Iraqi sovereignty. There's also this Kurdish issue in Turkey to manage. There are 20 million Kurds, 15 to 20 million Kurds in Turkey alone. So managing this Kurdish problem and establishing relations with the Kurds of Iraq is one way that Turkey hopes to do it. That is to say, create strong economic ties, create strong commercial ties, which will eventually spill over and positively affect other groups.
Do you think the Turks would be happy if indeed the Kurds in Iraq effectively severed links with Iraq?
There is no regional state that is going to support a Kurdish state. What Turkey would like to see, if it ever were to happen, it would certainly be a Kurdish entity under Turkey's control. So that as a landlocked region, this is a region that would become heavily dependent upon Turkey. That means that Kurdish autonomy in some ways would become now linked to Turkey. But there is neither Iran, Neither Syria nor Turkey wants to see an independent Kurdish state.
Now, of course, there's parliamentary elections in Iraq in the next month or so, and that's making any negotiations to seek some sort of compromise between the Kurds and the Iraqi central government somewhat difficult, isn't it?
This is, again, another indication of the political brinkmanship in which the Kurds and the central government in Iraq, or the federal government, excuse me, are taking this issue. So that you've had some small short-term agreement right now brokered by the Americans, in the sense that the Kurds have agreed to ship out 100,000 barrels of oil because they need to get paid. And this shows the vulnerability of the Kurdistan region as well. On the other hand, this election is likely to take the Iraqis and the Kurds until at least the fall to form a new government, because the last time there were elections, it was 10 months before a government was formed.
But Maliki needs the Kurds in order to get re-elected, doesn't he?
And Maliki needs Kurdish backing, absolutely correct, and there's going to have to be deals made. So what you're seeing again is this oil brinkmanship being tied to political brinkmanship and who's going to get the best deal. So no one is really committing themselves to any long-term deal right now. And there's a lot of political tensions, and this is why we go into the second big issue, which is land. A lot of this oil is linked to disputed territories. And this is where you are getting al-Qaeda infiltrations. You are getting a much more precarious security situation. So when we talk about oil getting out of the Kurdistan region, you're also talking about now disputes over ownership of land. And oil is Iraq's main resource. It's 95% of Iraqi revenues come from oil. This is a political issue.
So where do you think things will end up? What do you think is going to happen?
It's very hard to say in the long term, but certainly in this very short term, we have to take year by year. Right now, the Iraqi Kurds are trapped a bit in the sense that they had banked on Turkey to get their oil out circumventing Baghdad. And I am certainly not sure that Turkey will go through with this. But now with the problems going on in Turkey with Prime Minister Erdogan, it's not so sure that they will have that flexibility. So it's pressing the Kurds to negotiate some kind of deal with Baghdad. But again, they're using this as a threat that at some point they will at least try to export their oil independently.
Still, life for people living in Iraq's Kurdistan is pretty prosperous compared to other parts of the region. But just how stable is that part of the world?
Yeah, this is perhaps my greatest concern for the instability of the region. As you said, people like to go, they see tall buildings, they say it's a booming success story.
They opened a ski resort there this winter.
There's a ski resort and there's people in paddle boats. 95% of the revenues come from Baghdad. 70% is to public sector salaries. So now you are talking about the requirement of a steady inflow of money. The region doesn't produce anything. It imports, about 85% of its imports come from Turkey. We're not talking about a prospering economy in which jobs are created or inflation rates are low. We're talking about a highly oil-dependent economy, and we know what comes from rentier states. So that when the money is cut off, like Baghdad did a couple of months ago, you're seeing a very big financial crisis in the region right now. So unless there's an alternative and a more diversified economy, this is on very unstable grounds.
And just how much is corruption a problem?
It's hard to measure corruption, but we can say, at least based on certain reports, certain transparency initiatives, that certainly in the energy sector, there's a big black hole that really people don't know how the ministry is running. It's coming within the Kurdish parliament itself. Where's the oil being tracked? How much revenues are being created? The Kurds themselves, outside of a small circle of party elites, have no idea. And this is one of Baghdad's contentions, rightly so. How can you be paid if you don't even explicitly show how you are exporting your oil?
Finally, let's talk about the Syrian Kurdish region. The Democratic Union Party, the most powerful group in the area, has been running the region since Assad's forces withdrew in 2012. They've created militia groups that are defending the area. What is the likelihood of them splitting from Syria as well?
Again, I don't see, like the Iraqi Kurdish case, I don't see a split in the very sense that they don't have their own revenue source. The Kurds in Syria have played a position where they're tacitly being supported by Assad or between the opposition and between the government in Damascus. However, they do have a very strong backing from the PKK. Okay, the vast majority of these Syrian Kurds have this militia, have this support.
In Turkey?
Absolutely. The PKK from Turkey, which is based in northern Iraq, has crossed the border, sending thousands of their troops to be part of this. So there is at least a demand for strong autonomy in Syria, which again is going to create very unstable situation as the war continues, because the Kurds in Syria do not want anything less than what the Kurds of Iraq have.
Denise Natali, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. And that's it for this edition of the Frans van Kat interview. Do stay with us here on Frans van Kat.